Good afternoon. I'm Anuj Mehrotra. I'm the Dean of the George Washington University School of Business, and I am delighted to welcome you to this session in the George Talks Business Series. Today, it is my distinct honor to introduce two exceptional women, really two superwomen today. Please join me first in welcoming our moderator, Dr. Liesl Riddle, the Dean for Graduate Programs and an Associate Professor of International Business and International Affairs at the George Washington University School of Business. Now, Dean Riddle has been on the faculty at GWSB for almost 20 years, and as Associate Dean, she has led the teams that promote, recruit, advise, and design outstanding student experiences for over 1,600 graduate students. She has led the reimagination of graduate business education, which now includes the most innovative, flexible, and customizable set of graduate programs and certificates. And as a faculty member, she received numerous teaching awards, including the prestigious George Washington Award and the GW School of Business Teaching Excellence Award. Thank you, Dr. Riddle, for serving as our moderator today. And now it is my distinct pleasure to introduce our guest today, Ms. Larysa Kautz, President and CEO at Melwood. After receiving her law degrees from Yale Law School and Georgetown University Law Center, Larysa focused her career on affordable housing development, venture philanthropy, and advising national and international nonprofits. Now, prior to joining Melwood, she was a partner at the Shaner and Lubitz law firm. Larysa currently serves on the Virginia Department for the Blind and Vision Impaired State Rehabilitation Council and the Fairfax Falls Church Community Services Board. She has previously volunteered as a consultant for President Obama's Office of White House Counsel and Virginia Governor Northam's transition team on the Policy Council on Workforce Development. Larysa has also lent her expertise to the Foundation for the National Archives as pro bono general counsel. And as a mother of a child on an autism spectrum, she is passionate about Melwood's mission of inclusion. She was named one of the 2017 leading women in Maryland by the Daily Record and has been honored by the Association of Corporate Counsel with the 2019 In-House Innovator Award and is an alumna of the Arlington Leadership Center for Excellence. And I have breaking news that Larysa was just named Melwood's permanent president and CEO. So congratulations, Larysa, and thank you for joining us today. Liesl, take it away.
Thank you, and Dean Mehrotra. It is such an honor to be able to meet you in person, Larysa. You know, one of the things that we have in common is that we both have children with very different, amazing abilities, but that also do have some difficulties and challenges that they face in the workforce and in their learning. I have to tell you that how I discovered Melwood was actually I was having a conversation with a really dear friend, and I was sharing with her how worried I was for my own son who has intellectual disability about what his future might be. And it was really then that she told me about Melwood and all the amazing possibilities that Melwood brings to young people just like my son. And for the very first time, I had hope for his future. So that's why when I heard that we were lining you up for George Talks Business, I jumped front of the line and asked if I could be the one to interview you. And thank you personally on behalf of parents like me for the work that you and your teams do.
Aw, thank you so much, Liesl.
Let's start at the very, very beginning. I want to know more about your background. How did you get to this particular role?
Well, it was a very circuitous route. I grew up in New Jersey to two immigrant parents who came over from Ukraine, and both of whom had pretty significant disabilities and had great barriers to employment, unfortunately. And I watched them struggle throughout my whole childhood, and I vowed that I would eventually get to a place where I could give back and be involved in an organization or career path that would help people like my parents be able to be included and to have a solid career path and a route to independence. So I was the first member of my family to go to college and then ended up going to Yale Law School after that. and started a career doing tax, actually, because I like to choose the most challenging of all subjects as I'm going forward. And that put me on a path to helping a lot of tax exempt organizations around the nation and around the globe to find ways to serve the individuals that they are meant to serve with their missions. So that was the route that put me on the tax exempt sort of career path. And then when I saw that Melwood had put forth an advertisement for their first in-house general counsel, and I saw what their mission was, that it was really trying to help people with significant disabilities to be included, to work and to play alongside everyone else in our community. And I knew that that was the place for me. So that's how I ended up at Melwood.
Well, talk a little bit about exactly who you serve, because you painted a little bit of a picture, but can you go more specific? How broad of a brushstroke do you really paint this idea of including people with different abilities?
So it's interesting. Well, first, it's interesting that both of you and I are parents of a young man on the autism spectrum, because Melwood was actually started by parents. In 1963, they got a donation of 7 acres of land just across the street from Andrews Air Force Base in Upper Marlboro, Maryland. And all they knew was they had children that they knew had skills and passions for different types of careers, and they wanted to help them find independence, get a paycheck, be able to live independently someday. So what's interesting is we've ended up doing so many different things over the past 57 years because as a need arose, those founders and then ultimately their successors on the board, they were encouraged and motivated to find solutions. So we do pre-employment, and we do employ a large number of people with significant cognitive and intellectual and developmental disabilities. But we also help a lot of our stakeholders play in the community. So we have a camp for children with disabilities down in Charles County, Maryland, where again, the parents that started Melwood, they saw a need. They saw that children with disabilities were not able to go to camp with their typically abled siblings. So they said, well, we're just going to start an integrated camp where any child can have the same experience. So we have horses, and you can get on a horse no matter what your disability is. You can get on a high ropes course even if you are in a wheelchair. It's incredible to see what parents do to change the world for their children. And so as Melwood grew, we now serve veterans with post-traumatic stress and trauma-related injuries. We do direct employment of people with disabilities. We do a lot of advocacy for the individuals whom we serve. And in essence, we're also an Ability One nonprofit agency, which I think is an interesting niche that most people don't know about. But I'm happy to tell you about it if you'd like to hear about it.
Yeah, please do. I think we really want to know more about Ability One.
Sure. So as you know, the federal government is one of the biggest spenders of money in this country, and they created this procurement program in the 1930s that puts aside a certain number of services and products on a list and says that the government has to procure those products or services from nonprofits like Melwood who employ people with significant disabilities. So 75% of all of our direct labor employees have serious disabilities, and we do work for the government essentially at 60 plus different contract sites, from the Department of Justice, the FBI, Fort Meade, basically across the DMV, the Maryland, Virginia, and DC. We clean buildings, we do total facilities maintenance, HVAC, electrical, administrative staffing work, and landscaping. So we've come a long way from the beginning, where we just had a group of children doing agricultural work and then horticultural work and selling plants. And now, for example, we do all of the plants at the Kennedy Center. So if you drive past the Kennedy Center, all those beautiful plants are grown in our greenhouses and then planted there by our employees.
Well, that's just fantastic. And I think for a parent like me, I think one of the most wonderful things about that, it's the inclusion aspect. It's not just, let's put you in a room and have you do something that we can pay you money for, but rather enabling them to feel as they are part of the community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting that you talk about sort of moving people into the community, and we've come a long way over the last few decades, where, we used to have a lot more sheltered workshops and piecemeal work and manufacturing for people with disabilities. And even now, as we do a lot of custodial work, and of course, right now that is essential to our government to be able to clean and sanitize. But Melwood's been
Mhm.
working very hard for the last 5+ years to find new career paths and not just have someone with a disability come and say, well, I've heard that I can pretty much be a janitor or a custodian, and that's about it. So we've been doing
Mhm.
pilot programs in cybersecurity, in tech training, in skilled trades to open up paths to people with disabilities that they've never had open before. So we look forward to continuing to do that, and really engaging a lot of employers in our area to dispel some of these myths about how difficult it might be to accommodate or orient or hire people with disabilities, because we've been doing it for 57 years. And I can tell you it's made our corporate culture better, and more inclusive, and we're better for it. So I think other employers will be as well.
I think that's really interesting because when you think about like on
Mhm.
education, so we've made so much as a progress as a country in
Right.
education, enabling our students with different abilities to truly be as integrated as possible and still learn,
Mhm.
right? But they still get sort of that as much as possible, that sort of included content. But then when you
Mhm.
try to explain that to a child that sort of ages out of the educational system into why does the world suddenly look differently than my
Absolutely.
school that included me, where they sort of wake
Yeah.
up to this sort of exclusion. I think your organization sort of helps to fill that void, but it
Mhm.
probably takes a lot on the advocacy work with companies too. So, talk to me a little bit about how do you
Mhm.
broach this subject about hiring these types of employees?
So interestingly, I mean, before COVID, when the unemployment rate was quite low, we worked a lot with companies, and we put ourselves out as a workforce solution, because there were a lot of
Mhm.
entry level jobs in IT, in skilled trades, and in other industries where they were having trouble filling those roles. And here we have a population of individuals who have been significantly underemployed or unemployed, for a very long time, double the rate of people with typical abilities. So it was nice taking advantage of a moment in time when there was a need for more employees. And so we put ourselves out there as a solution. Now, of course, with the unemployment rate higher, it's a little more difficult and a lot more people are unemployed. But what we tend to talk about is that first, accommodations for people with disabilities are not as expensive as employers think that they are, and we put ourselves out there. We will prove it. We will help someone get that job, and then we will stay with them for 6 months and do coaching, and help managers learn to work with individuals of differing abilities and really how to speak to their workforce, to just be more thoughtful and more sort of thoughtful about how you're perceived, and how other people kind of assume best intentions was what I would
Mhm.
say. And everything that we teach managers and HR departments in private employers, they're all skills that are useful for any kind of workforce, whether it's neurodiverse or not. So we've found that it takes hold very easily and very quickly. It improves all corporate culture and morale of all employees when we start to use these kinds of tactics, and employee development. So we've been successful where we managed to get a foothold, and we're hoping that there's more incentive from the federal government at some point for private employers to employ more people with disabilities.
Yeah,
So
and I
I
mean, it sounds like your organization just sort of is between sort of two markets, right? You're trying to really kind of reach that chasm between both the potential employees and the employers, and you're trying to really market the idea of both
Mhm.
of them working, more closely together. And so I wonder, kind of thinking about going up beyond ability. One, I mean, that's one of the things I love about Millwood is just how innovative you are. Like you just never stop looking at what's next. And
Mhm.
that's, as I said, that's what gives us hope as parents and people in the community. Who are some of
Mhm.
the partners that you've worked with in the private sector? You've spoken a little bit about the government
Mhm.
that have been useful to you at Melwood.
So we've been working with MITRE Corporation. They had an award from the Gear Challenge, which was a challenge to come up with a playbook for the federal government, to themselves directly, recruit, hire, orient, and accommodate individuals with disabilities, because the government itself hasn't been doing that well at meeting their goals, of hiring neurodiverse individuals. So MITRE chose us as their partner And right now we're putting together a cohort of individuals that Melwood will employ initially, and they will work for two different agencies whose names I'm not allowed to tell you right now. And as we do the pre-employment training and as we orient and then help them get through the first, I think it's 6 months, it might be more than 6 months of working as a staffing solution almost for us, where we provide the services to the federal agency. That's their sort of period of time where they get acclimated, and then they transition to direct employment as federal employees, which I think is a great job. It's something that the government has not been necessarily that great at doing. It is really putting themselves out there and recruiting individuals on the autism spectrum, which is specifically what this program is aimed at. And in the meantime, MITRE is pulling together all of the data, the statistics, and the manual, really the playbook around this program, to then have other agencies be able to pick it up and say, we want to do this, we can do this, and either partner with a Melwood to help, because that's really that probationary kind of initial period is so important to get people acclimated with working together. And so we hope that that's a big success. And then we're also working with KPMG on a similar project, except instead of aimed at public employment in the government, we're aiming at the private sector. To really show how we can take cohorts of individuals on the autism spectrum and similarly train them, orient them, and accommodate them, and really have a playbook for a private contractor or a private company to be able to do the same and start a similar program. So those are some of the major companies we've been working with. Cybrary has been a great partner. They're the ones that have offered their own certification and licensing and training software for us to use in our Ability program, where we've been helping adults, veterans, adults on the spectrum, kids coming out of school, not being able to find a job, even though sometimes they have a college degree and they know coding, but they just can't get that past that leap of a resume, an interview, kind of the initial orientation. And so we help both them get their technical certificate or license that helps them be employable or marketable, and we do the wraparound support. So interviewing, we will stay with them through the entire process until they get to where they're employed, and then we will work with them to do job coaching if necessary afterwards as well. And we've placed people with Wells Fargo, KPMG, GDIT, I think JP Morgan. So there's a need and there's an interest. So I hope we can continue to grow that program.
Well, it sounds like you've had a lot of really, really great partners. And we have an audience here. We have, at GW, we have a Master of Science in Human Resource Management. We offer several certificates in things like managing human capital, management and leadership, and so on. And so I wonder if you had the opportunity to sit down and speak with some of these sort of managers of today and tomorrow about this issue, what would you say to them? What advice, what ideas would you have for them?
So I've told my staff this many times that I cannot find any person anywhere that I can't talk about Melwood and how we could partner with them. Because the good thing is that we're trying to find career paths in basically any industry and in any job. And I think there's a lot for us to offer, and for other companies and university departments to offer in terms of apprenticeship, internships, trainings, particularly if there's a career path that involves a certificate or a license. We can help provide that wraparound service and help turn that study, that course into something that's really accessible by our individuals, and be in the background while the university departments provide the actual kind of curriculum and subject matter expertise. So we've been, the College of Southern Maryland, we have a partnership with them to do some skilled trades courses. We've partnered with Marymount University School of Design for this year's Designathon, where people of differing abilities from our Ability program joined students, professors, and industry experts for a competition to design innovative and unique autism-friendly workplaces. We definitely want to partner with business schools to help show the advantages of an inclusive workforce, because there's actual numbers behind it. When you look at companies that have a neurodiverse workforce, they're actually more profitable. They have less turnover. They can retain employees better, and it's becoming, now that people have been doing it for longer, we can actually have some data, kind of an impact studies around it. We're partnering with medical programs looking at the clinical side of cognitive and developmental disabilities. Our board member, Dr. Kevin Pelfrey at the University of Virginia, has been working with us on that. I mean, every university department has something to contribute to the cause, because any job field or any career path can be done by someone with a disability. And, we can show you how.
Well, thank you so much, Larysa, for sharing about your wonderful organization, for spending time talking with me and inspiring not just me, but really that whole universe out there of potential employees and employers and the future managers of tomorrow. So it was so wonderful to have a chat with you today. And I want to thank all of you out there that have joined us for today's George Talks Business. And I want to invite you to our next live streaming version of the series. Next Wednesday, our guest will be Eric Hilton, who is the Commissioner of the Small Business Self-Employed Division at the Internal Revenue Service, who will be interviewed by Dr. Vanessa Perry, the Dean of Faculty and Research at the George Washington University School of Business. We hope you join us then.